Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Hare Krishna. Welcome to our Bhagavata Pravaha online course. Today is the last day of our fourth canto of Srimad Bhagavatam. And in the last 6 days, we have discussed the first 28 chapters of the fourth canto of Srimad Bhagavatam. Today we will discuss the last 3 chapters, chapters number 29, 30 and 31. In the chapter number 25, we began the description of the allegorical story of Puranjana as told by Narada Muni to King Prachinabarhi. And that allegorical story continued from 25th chapter to 28th chapter. And in the 29th chapter, we will see that Prachinabarhi wants a proper elaboration of this allegorical story spoken by Narada Muni. Now, we studied these last 4 chapters as Narada Muni is speaking the allegorical story. Prabhupada and our acharyas are giving explanations to that allegorical story right in those purports. So we understood what the different characters and aspects in the allegorical story represent in our real conditioned life. But Prachinabarhi is hearing the story alone from Narada Muni, so he could not completely understand. So he wanted a more direct explanation of the allegorical story, and he wanted an explanation of what these characters and other aspects in the allegorical story represent in the real life of a soul, of a living entity. So Narada Muni gives the direct explanation of this allegory in the 29th chapter, and Narada Muni also elaborately describes the transmigration of conditioned soul from one body to another body and how mind is the cause of the transmigration, subtle body. So that is the subject matter of 29th chapter. And after this, in the last 2 chapters, 30th and 31st chapters, we see the prayers of the Prachetas, the sons of Prachinabarhi, and we also see the perfection attained by Prachetas after ruling the kingdom. So these are the this is the subject matter of this today's episode, the last episode of the 4th canto. We will begin with 29th chapter. So in chapter number 25, 26, 27, 28, we have seen the story of Puranjan, how King Puranjan, who represents a conditioned soul, goes to a city of 9 gates and sees Puranjani and marries her and begets hundreds of children. And also, as he becomes old, this Kalakanya and Chandavega and Prajvara attack the city, and Puranjani is dragged by the soldiers of Yavana. These Gandharvas just drag him out of the city and he dies. And because he died remembering his wife, he becomes a woman in the next life, and he becomes Vaidarbhi, the wife of Malayadhvaja. And Malayadhvaja, when he retired and then he departed, and Malayadhvaja started lamenting for, then Vaidarbhi started lamenting for Malayadhvaja's death. At that time, Avignata, the friend of Puranjana, basically the super soul, comes and enlightens her. So all this we have discussed very elaborately in the previous episode. So now Narada Muni will give direct explanation of this whole allegory to Prachinabarhi. So Prachinabarhi asks for a direct explanation. Then Narada Muni says, "Oh Prachinabarhi, this Puranjana is none other than the Jiva, the living entity. Number 2, this city is the body, material body. And the 9 gates of city are the 9 holes of the human body. And Avignata is the super soul, he is the supreme lord. And Puranjani is the material intelligence. And the male friends of Puranjani, they are the 10 senses. And the 11th extra attendant, so that represents the mind. And the female friends of Puranjani, they represent the actions of senses or the sense gratificatory desires. And the states to which Puranjani is traveling, they are the sense objects. So in this way, Narada Muni describes what different elements of this allegory represent in the real life. And after this, Narada Muni also describes the body chariot analogy, where the soul is compared to the person who is traveling in the chariot, and the intelligence is compared to the driver of the chariot. The mind is compared to the reins or the ropes of the chariot, which are tied to the horses, and the horses, the 5 horses are compared to the 5 senses. So in this way, Narada Muni describes the body chariot analogy also. After that, Narada Muni directly describes the saga of the conditioned soul in this material realm. Narada Muni says in the 26th shloka till 33rd shloka, Narada Muni says that the material in the material world, the conditioned soul or the jiva, the living entity, forgets the Supreme Lord, and because of the forgetfulness of Supreme Lord, Krishna, the jiva is entrapped in this conditioned world and influenced by the material modes, influenced by sattva, rajas, tamo gunas, and suffers in this world. So under the influence of sattva guna or goodness, one will perform pious activities and one may go to heaven. And under the influence of rajoguna, one may conduct very laborious and passionate activities, and one may continue to stay in this earthly planet. And under the influence of tamoguna, one may perform very ignorant activities, one may enter animal kingdom also. Like that, the conditioned soul goes from one body to another body, one planet to another planet in this material world. And in this material universe, he just unnecessarily traverses. He transmigrates from one material body to another material body. And this kind of wandering, or Brahmanda Brahman. Brahman means wandering. Brahmanda means this whole universe. So this kind of wandering in this material universe is compared to the wanderings of a stray dog. Kshutparito yatha dina sarameyo graham graham charan vindanti yaddishtam dandam odanamevava tatha kamashayo jiva uchchavacha patha brahman uparyadhova madhyeva yati dishtam priya priyam. Narada Muni speaks in these 2 slokas number 30 and 31 of the 29th chapter. He says that Kshutparito yatha dinaha, a poor dog, by being afflicted by hunger, may go from one house to another house. The dog may go from one house to another house to get some food. And in some houses, the dog might get some food. And in some houses, the dog may not get food. The dog may be chased away also. People may not be compassionate enough to feed some food to the dog. So just as dog goes from one place to another place, one house to another house, sarameyam graham graham. So just like dog goes from one house to another house in search of some food, similarly, the conditioned soul goes from one body to another body, one planet to another planet, to attain sense gratificatory happiness. He is desiring for sense enjoyment and goes from one species to another species. Tatha kamashayo jiva uchchavacha patha brahman. So he goes to upper planets, he goes to lower planets, and he stays in this middle planet. So like that, he is just doing Brahman, Uchchavacha, going to higher positions, lower positions. Sometimes he becomes a Devata in the heavenly planets. Sometimes the conditioned soul becomes a dog or a cat or an elephant or a giraffe or an insect or a worm in stool. Sometimes he becomes a human being, sometimes as a male, sometimes as a female. So like that, the jiva undergoes multiple transformations of body. Why? Because kamashayo, because of aspirations for sense enjoyment. Uparyadhova madhyeva yati dishtam priya apriyam. And in the different planetary systems, the jiva experiences so many dualities of happiness and distress. So, and when there is distress in this world, the conditioned soul tries to counteract the distress by various remedies. And these remedies are not actually the ultimate solutions. He says, Narada Muni says in the 33rd shloka, Yatha hi purusho bharam sirasa guru mudvahan tam skandena sa adhatte tatha sarvaha pratikriyaha. You can see that picture where a person is carrying a load, some sack, some bag. So, Now somebody is carrying bag on one shoulder, say 50 kilos bag on one shoulder, and after carrying for little distance, the person gets tired, and what does he do? He may take it and then put it on another shoulder. So is there any change in the situation? Yes, there is change of shoulder, but there is no change of bag, there is no reduction of weight, but there is some kind of relief. So this part was little tired, so this shoulder was used to carry the bag. So now when we are trying to find material solutions for material problems in this material world, our attempt is also like that. We just shift our focus from one problem to another problem. So when we get another problem, or when we divert our mind to another problem, the other problem seems to be little subsided. Right? We just shift our focus. That's the whole way of resolving problems in this world oftentimes. So such attempts to escape miseries are like shifting a burden from from head to shoulder. Sometimes one may carry, he's holding on shoulder, and then he will carry on the head, and after that he will put again on the shoulder. So like that, and or sometimes he may carry like this. So ultimately he's carrying the burden, but there is some relief in changing the positions. So ultimately there is problem in this material world, but we find some kind of so-called relief just by changing our focus, or just meeting some variety. That's all. There is ultimately there is no solution. How will the person be relieved of this burden? He has to put it down. Then only he is relieved of the burden. But if he is carrying here or here or here or here, wherever, he is carrying the burden. Similarly, in this material world also, there is misery everywhere, but sometimes the focus is shifted from here to there, and we consider that as a relief or a solution. And to counteract this dream-like situation in this material world, we cannot take shelter of another hallucination. The ultimate solution is bhakti yoga. We have to perform bhakti unto Krishna. That is the only remedy. The only remedy is to surrender unto Krishna. You can see the picture where the devotee is drowning in this material ocean, and Krishna is coming on the back of Garuda to rescue this devotee. So, and what is the foremost way of expressing our surrender to Krishna? The foremost way is hearing the descriptions of Krishna, hearing the glories of Krishna from the devotees of Krishna. We develop a love and attraction towards Krishna, and we develop inspiration to go back to Krishna. So hearing constitutes the an important aspect of bhakti yoga, and we have to hear from a bona fide guru, from a bona fide teacher, and by hearing from bona fide teachers of the science of bhakti yoga, one can develop detachment, one can develop knowledge. So now he says in the 39th shloka, Narada Muni says, Yatra bhagavata rajan sadhavo vishadashayah bhagavad gunanukathana shravana vyagrachetasah. He says, Yatha bhagavata rajan sadhavo vishadashayah. Sadhus are having pure aspirations. They are pure hearted. So Krishna Katha found in the association of such sadhus, such pure devotees, is so purifying. So in that association, Krishna Katha is found in the association of pure devotees, and in that association we get opportunities to hear, to chant, and to eagerly remember Krishna's glories. Okay, and if we drink Krishna Katha eagerly through our ears, when the pure devotees are vibrating that Krishna Katha, the nectarian sound vibrations of that Krishna Katha enter our ear holes and purify our consciousness. Narada Muni says, and this theme has repeated several times in the entire Srimad Bhagavatam, and specifically in the 4th canto also. So the solution for all material miseries is considered the process of hearing Krishna Katha in the association of devotees. Dhruva said this, Prithu said this, Shiva said this, now Narada is saying this. And later in the next chapter, Prachetas also will say this, like that. Tasmin mahan mukharita madhubhit charitram piyusha sesha saritah paritah shravanti. So he says that drinking Krishna Katha eagerly through ears relieves us from hunger, thirst, lamentation, and all the other material miseries. So now not even Brahma, Shiva, Kumaras, know the Supreme Lord completely. But if we perform bhakti, to a considerable extent we can understand the Lord. Bhaktyamam abhijanati. These Vedic rituals in which one may sacrifice certain animals and follow certain rules and regulations, these Vedic rituals are not actually substantial in uplifting one's consciousness. In fact, they could entangle one's consciousness in karmakandic rituals and material enjoyment and divert one from the path of bhakti yoga, direct one from one's ultimate benefit of entering the spiritual realm. So now he says, Narada Muni directly says, "Oh Prachina Barhi, you have foolishly killed so many animals in the name of sacrifices. So that is not correct. So better you perform bhakti yoga." So everyone should take shelter of the Lord, who is the super soul, the supreme controller. He says in the 51st shloka, "Savai prayatamaschatma yato anabhayaman vapi iti veda savai vidvan yo vidvan sagurur harihi." The person who can teach the process of bhakti yoga is the real teacher. So later, Narada Muni also gives another allegorical story, very small. So this story is about a deer. So a deer is absorbed in enjoying the fruits and other things in the honey and other things in the forest, along with the companions, the children deer, the small deer are there, then the wife deer is there. So like that, the deer is absorbed in so much of enjoyment, so-called enjoyment, but the deer does not notice that time factor. Now, in the story, the deer does not notice that a tiger and a hunter from both sides are trying to attack this deer. So a tiger is about to pounce on this deer and then eat its flesh, and the hunter is about to throw his arrow to kill the deer. But the innocent deer, ignorant deer, does not know this. So this tiger is compared to the time factor. So by the time factor, one will get deteriorated in one's material body and possessions and everything. And the hunter is compared to the superintendent of death, the lord of death. So death is there, time is passing by, bringing us to old age and taking us to different experiences. And death is also there, at any point death could come. So now this Prachina Barhi says that, "Oh Narada Muni, you are giving me teachings of bhakti yoga. Actually, none of my previous gurus, whoever taught me, they only taught me Vedic rituals and all. No, none of them taught me the process of bhakti yoga. I have been deprived of this divine knowledge of bhakti yoga till I met you." So the teacher who teaches bhakti yoga unto the Supreme Lord, which is the ultimate spiritual path, so he is a real teacher according to Srimad Bhagavatam. So many teachers came to direct our Prachina Barhi, but all of them engaged him in different ways. But Narada Muni told him the ultimate path of salvation, ultimate path back to Godhead, which is bhakti yoga. So he is the real teacher. So now Prachina Barhi had a question. You say that the activities that we perform now will cause some troubles to us in the next life also. How is that possible? What is the proof for this? Then our Narada Muni describes the whole process of transmigration, how the jiva, the living being, goes from one body to another body, one material body to another material body. Basically, the jiva will leave one gross body, but the subtle body remains intact. The subtle body constitutes of mind, intelligence and ego. So the subtle body carries the soul from one gross body to another gross body. So when a person goes from one gross body to another gross body, then he is carried by the subtle body. So all the material impressions and the material desires that are stored in the mind go from one body to another body along with the soul. Thus the soul tries to continue to pursue his material desires in a new body. So in one body he could not fulfill certain desires, he gets another body. The previous body has become old and he has to give it up, or the previous body has been killed untimely because of his own karma. So then he will have to fulfill other desires that he has in the another body, like that. So just like in dream also, one will assume another body. So when somebody is sleeping and he is having dream, In a dream, he may assume another body. Somebody may think that I have become a king, or I have become a police, or I have become a thief. So like that, somebody may assume a different body in the dream. So when he gets up, then he finds himself in this body only. Similarly, this whole material, our experience and all the bodies that we have in this material world are considered like a dreamy situation. They are not false, they are real, but they are called dream in the sense that they are like artificial impositions on the spirit soul. So we have a real experience of bliss in our spiritual bodies, in the loving company of the Lord, but because of this Maya, we are entrapped in this material bodies and experiencing material miseries, and this whole miserable situation is like is compared to a dream. So in a dream, somebody is just sleeping and he's having a dream and he's being chased by a tiger or a lion, and then he's getting fearful. He is so miserable in the dream, and when he wakes up from the dream and he gets up from the sleep, then he understands, oh no, tiger is chasing me. Similarly, when we awaken to our original spiritual consciousness of Krishna consciousness, or when we revive our original position as servants and lovers of Krishna, then we will be, we don't have to experience all the material miseries. There is another beautiful example that comes in the 4th canto only, in the previous chapters. Now there is a coconut. So when the coconut is very green, then inside the coconut there is pulp. The pulp is attached to the shell when the coconut is very young and very green. But when the coconut becomes very dry and all the water inside the coconut is totally evaporated, then the pulp inside the coconut is disconnected from the shell. So now when you just shake the coconut, you can hear the sound also, because the pulp inside the coconut got disconnected from the shell. So similarly, when the soul, the living entity, reawakens to one's spiritual consciousness, then one will be disconnected from the demands of the gross and subtle material bodies. One will experience the real bliss of the soul within, in connection with the Supreme Lord. That happens by the performance of Bhakti Yoga. So by identifying oneself with the material body, one undergoes a lot of suffering. But if one does not identify oneself with the material body, there is actually no suffering even while living in this material world. So now sometimes we get different desires, and we may not have had those experiences in our minds in this life, entire life. Somebody may be, say, 30 years old, and in the last 30 years, the person may not have had certain experience, and suddenly a desire manifests in his mind. Why? Because the mind, which is a storehouse of so many impressions, will carry impressions not only in this lifetime, will carry impressions from previous lifetime also. Suddenly some desire just manifests, and one will start pursuing that desire. And sometimes some people develop a lot of inclination to perform Bhakti Yoga. All of a sudden, although they may not have had experience of practicing Bhakti since their birth, suddenly at some point in their life, they become very devoted to the Lord. They may be continuing the practice of Bhakti Yoga, which they have already practiced in the previous life to a certain degree, and they are continuing now. So like that, the subtle body, which is a storehouse of so many impressions, will carry the soul from one body to another body, and the person who is the embodied person in a new life, he will have certain thoughts or certain feelings or certain nature that he has acquired from the previous lifetimes also. So in this way, there is a lot of description given about the mind, how mind is the cause of transmigration from one body to another body. So now this material body, the subtle body, could be destroyed. Means the material mind, material intelligence, material ego, false ego could be destroyed or could be transformed or could be spiritualized by the practice of Bhakti Yoga. When we practice Bhakti, when we hear Krishna Katha in the association of devotees, our mind become spiritualized. Means we start thinking, feeling and willing in terms of Krishna Bhakti. And our intelligence gets spiritualized. We start utilizing our intelligence to render service to Krishna. Our ego gets spiritualized. Instead of identifying ourselves with some material designations as a male or a female or an Indian or an American or a teacher or a student or an employee or a subordinate or a master or a servant. So all these are temporary designations. Instead of identifying ourselves with all these temporary designations, we start identifying ourselves as servants of Krishna. So by the practice of Bhakti Yoga, our subtle body gets spiritualized, and the material, this gross body, which functions according to the desires of the subtle body, is also getting spiritualized, in the sense that the senses will not act on a material plane. The senses start engaging in spiritual activities, and the senses perform spiritual services. So they are acting as if they are spiritual senses. It's just a matter of few years before we quit this material body and attain a spiritual body, regain our spiritual body to engage in Krishna service with spiritual senses. So for that, we need to spiritualize our subtle body by engaging in Bhakti Yoga under the guidance of devotees of Krishna. So in this way, Narada Muni very elaborately describes the transmigration of soul and gives direct teachings of Bhakti Yoga. And finally, Prachinabarhi is enlightened, and he develops an inspiration to practice Bhakti Yoga. And by the inspiration of Narada Muni, Prachinabarhi retires from his active kingly life even before his sons, the Prachetas, return from their austerities. So Prachetas went to do austerities. They were chanting Rudra Gita, as we discussed in a couple of episodes before. And now Prachinabarhi is enlightened by Narada Muni, and he became inspired to practice bhakti, and he retires. And the Prachetas are yet to come. So Prachinabarhi in this way perfects his life under the divine guidance of Narada Muni. So Narada Muni is such a wonderful personality that he guides so many exalted personalities on the path of devotional service. He guides so many kings. He guided Dhruva Maharaj and made him a pure devotee. And now he is guiding Prachinabarhi. So that completes the story of Prachinabarhi. So Prachinabarhi's sons, the Prachetas, are doing tapasya. They are chanting Rudra Gita under waters, under the guidance of Shiva. What happened to them, we will discuss in the 30th chapter. So in the 30th chapter, Vidura asks this question: what happened to the Prachetas? What did they attain? Then Maitreya Muni describes that Prachetas satisfied Lord Vishnu by performing austerities for 10,000 years under waters and chanting Rudra Gita. Then the Supreme Lord appeared in front of Prachetas. Prachetas are 10 in number. So the Lord appeared in front of Prachetas in a beautiful form that has 8 hands. In 8-handed beautiful form. He had a dazzling helmet. He had Kaustubhamani. He came on the back of Garuda. Can you imagine? Garuda is flying, and with his wings, he entered this water body and gave darshan to Prachetas under the water. So Garuda and the Lord, so the Lord and his associates can enter anywhere. The Lord is also accompanied by so many other people. So can a bird fly within water? Garuda can fly. The Lord entered the water and gave darshan to these 10 Prachetas. And the first thing that the Supreme Lord Vishnu told the Prachetas is how he was so impressed with their friendships, with their loving relationships. He says, Varam, in the 8th shloka he says, Varam vrinidhvam bhadram vo yuyam me nrupanandana sauhardhena prathak dharma tushto ham sauhrdena va. He says, Varam vrinidhvam bhadram vo, oh my dear Prachetas, I am going to give you one vara, one benediction. Bhadram vo, let there be auspiciousness unto you. Yuyam me nrupanandana, O kings of great, O sons of great king. So let there be auspiciousness unto you. He says, Sauhardhena apruthak dharma. While you are performing your dharma, while you are performing your bhakti yoga and various austerities, you all have maintained such beautiful, loving friendships and relationships amongst yourselves. Sauhardhena. So it's very important for us to practice bhakti very diligently, strictly, and without any motivations, without any interruptions. We have to practice bhakti. but it is also important for us to maintain very loving and cordial relationships with other devotees while practicing bhakti. So my bhakti is not only my private affair. Yes, it is on a personal level, but I should also be having good relationships and connections and friendships with other devotees, because my bhakti is also dependent on the association of devotees, the Vaishnava Sangha. So when Vaishnava Sangha is healthy and in good spirits, I will also practice bhakti in good spirits. So like that, our Vishnu glorifies the friendships of the Prachetas. So in this way, he emphasizes the need to maintain good loving relationships amongst the Vaishnavas. When we have good relationships amongst us, then we can please the Supreme Lord. And when the Supreme Lord is pleased, we will get all benedictions that we desire, that we deserve, that we need according to the Lord. So the Lord is pleased when devotees cooperate with each other and they love each other and they serve together. So it's not just I will serve the Lord. It is we together, let us serve the Lord. Now he says that not only you are very glorious in maintaining good friendships, those who remember you, O Prachetas, those who remember you also become very friendly with other devotees. So if we want to develop some good quality, we should basically remember the activities or seek inspiration from those people who have that good quality. If we want loving friendships amongst with other devotees, we should remember the activities of Prachetas who are so loving and friendly amongst themselves. The real unity is being united in one's attempts to render service to Krishna. So 10 devotees are there. They are always united in their purpose of rendering service to Krishna. So, but because we sometimes lean to material considerations, there could be some ego clashes and differences of opinion. Actually, there is no difference of opinion amongst devotees, in the sense that all devotees want to render service to Krishna. But different devotees want to render service to Krishna in different ways. That's the only difference. But as far as the principle of service is concerned, all devotees agree to the principle, but different devotees have different flavors and different tastes and different approaches to how to do that seva. But the service attitude is common amongst all devotees. For instance, when Vibhishana came to surrender unto Lord Ramachandra, Lord Ram asked the monkeys, so what is your opinion? My dear monkeys, there is Jambavan there, Hanuman is there is Sugriva, and then Nala, Neela, Angada, so many such monkey warriors are there. Lord Ramachandra asked them, what is your opinion about accepting Vibhishana? Vibhishana came to take my shelter. Then Sugriva gave his opinion. Different devotees gave different opinions, but Sugriva gave his opinion as a king. I consider that this Vibhishana must be having some agenda within him. After all, he is the brother of your enemy Ravana. He is a Rakshasa. How can Rakshasas be trusted? Rakshasas are not trustworthy. Maybe he could be a spy. So my suggestion is, let us not accept him in our troop, and if needed we can even kill him also. It's not, he is a Rakshasa. So Sugriva's opinion is, Ram should not accept Vibhishan. Then Lord Ramachandra asked Hanumanji. Hanumanji said, I could see the face of I could see the face of Vibhishana. So seeing his expressions and his whole demeanor, I don't think that he has any malicious intentions. He genuinely came seeking your shelter. Hanumanji said, let us accept him in our troop. So Hanumanji's opinion is, Vibhishan should be accepted. Sugriva's opinion is, Vibhishan should not be accepted. So Lord Ramachandra gave his opinion finally. He said that, what to speak of Vibhishan, even if Ravana comes to surrender unto me and take my shelter, I accept him. So then Sugriva said, oh, if this is your opinion, my dear Lord, so let us accept Vibhishan. So Sugriva had an opinion earlier, according to his intelligence, but later Sugriva changed his opinion because he understood what pleases the Lord. So Hanumanji said, let's accept Vibhishan. with his intelligence, he thought that it is beneficial for Lord Ramachandra. It will be of better service for Lord Ramachandra if Vibhishana is accepted. But Sugriva had his fears as a king. He had his fears. So he was also thinking about the welfare of Lord Ramachandra. He is also thinking about the service of Ram only. That's why he said no. But although Sugriva said no and Hanumanji said yes, both of them, although they are opposite in their opinions, although there is a difference of opinion between them, they both have service attitude only. They both wanted to serve Lord Ramachandra only. So Ramachandra accepted, Lord Ram accepted their emotions, not exactly their opinion. So he accepted one opinion, he did not accept other opinion. He could accept only one. But he accepted their mood, their bhavas he accepted. Bhavagrahi Janardana. So all the devotees want to render service to the Lord. In that sense, there is no difference of opinion as such. But some devotee with his intelligence, with his maturity, whatever is there at his disposal, he wants to serve the Lord in certain way, to certain degree. And sometimes there could be some mistakes in the service also, but the genuine service attitude is considered by the Lord. So Lord Ramachandra did not reject Sugriva, or Sugriva and Hanumanji did not have a fight. Sugriva did not feel a sense of inferiority complex. Oh, Hanumanji's advice is accepted, I am not accepted. And Hanumanji did not feel a sense of superiority complex. And Sugriva continued to be the king, the commander-in-chief of the whole monkey army. So the devotees may have differences of opinion, but they have sincere service attitude. They want to render service to the Lord, and they have loving friendships. Although every Vaishnava is of a different style, they have a different styles of functioning. So another aspect of Prachetas is being glorified by the Lord. The Lord appreciated their friendships, their unity, and their relationships. Secondly, the Lord glorified their submissiveness in the 11th verse. In the 11th verse, he says, "Oh, my dear Prachetas, you are so submissive to your authorities. Your father instructed you to go and do austerities. You were submissive to him. And Lord Shiva, your guru, instructed you to chant Rudra Gita for 10,000 years. You are so submissive to him." So disciple has to be submissive to guru, and the disciple has to cooperate with other disciples. These are the two principles that the Lord is highlighting. A disciple should submissively render service to guru and superiors while having very loving relationships with his co-disciples, with his equals, with the other sadhakas. So this is what we can learn from Prachetas. Then also the Lord said, "Oh Prachetas, now you all can go out and marry one girl named Marisha. So you will have glorious son." Prachetas' son would be Daksha. All these 10 children, all these 10 Prachetas, they would marry one girl named Marisha. And this Marisha was the daughter of a sage named Kandu and an Apsara named Pramlocha. Once this Kandu, the sage, is doing his tapasya, and Indra became insecure. So Indra had sent an Apsara named Pramlocha to distract this Kandu from his austerities. And this Pramlocha attracted this Kandu, and they united, and as a result, Marisha was born. And this little baby girl, Marisha, when she was born, then Apsara was not ready to take care. Pramlocha just left her, abandoned her. And she just left. And the sage, this Kandu, he thought that I am a sage, how can I take care? So he left. So Apsara cannot take care, and the sage also cannot take care. The child is just lying there. So all the trees took care of this baby girl. The lord of the trees is moon. The moon god came and kept his finger in the mouth of this baby girl and then nourished her, and in that way she grew up. So that lady, that girl Marisha, is recommended as a wife by Supreme Lord Vishnu for the Prachetas. So Prachetas are instructed to marry all of them, and Prachetas would be enjoying facilities for 1 million celestial years, and they will also develop unadulterated bhakti towards the Lord, and they will go back to Godhead. The Lord has predicted all this. So when the Lord told like this to the Prachetas, then Prachetas began to offer their prayers, very beautiful prayers. We will discuss these prayers briefly. From the 22nd shloka, the prayers will begin. The first prayer says, नमो नमः क्लेशविनाशनाय निरूपितोदारगुणवयाय मनोवचो वेगपुरोजवाय सर्वाक्षमार्गैरगताध्वने नमः. Namo Namaha Klesha Vinashanaya. The Prachetas are saying that, oh Lord, you are the Klesha Vinashanaya. You can completely vanquish all our kleshas or distresses. Klesha means difficulty. The Lord will destroy the difficulties of devotees. Klesha Vinashanaya. Nirupitodara Guna Vayaya. Nirupita, it has been proved. What has been proved? It has been proved that the Lord's names and qualities are extremely magnanimous. Nirupita Udara. Udara means very magnanimous or benevolent. Guna Ahvayaya. Guna is qualities, Ahvaya means names. The Lord's names and qualities are extremely magnanimous. And Mano Vacho Vega Purojavaya means the Lord, we cannot reach the Lord by the speed of our mind or senses. Mano vacho, our words. Mana is mind, vacha is our tongue, our words. So we cannot sufficiently describe the Lord. We cannot sufficiently think of the Lord's glories. So He is beyond the conception of our mind, beyond the description of our tongue. And Sarvakshamargair Gatadhvane Namaha. Sarvakshamargair. So through all our senses and sensual activities, we cannot understand the Lord. The senses are insufficient to understand the Lord. That's why He is called Adhokshaja. He is beyond sense perception. With material eyes, one cannot see the Lord. With material nose, one cannot smell the Lord. With material ears, one cannot sufficiently hear about the Lord and understand the Lord. But when we engage all these material senses in Krishna's service, Krishna will reveal Himself to us. That's why it is said that Hrishikesha Hrishikena Sevanam. When these material senses, which do not have the ability to understand the Lord in their material position, when they are engaged in various spiritual activities, they become spiritualized. And with that spiritualized senses, we can understand. Sevan mukhehi jihvadau swayameva spuratyada ataha Sri Krishna namadi nabhavet grahyam indriyaihi. So we cannot understand the Lord's names or glories or forms with our material senses, but sevon mukhehi jihvadau, if we engage those very senses in Krishna's seva, Krishna's service, then we can understand the Lord. Swayameva spuratyada, the Lord will reveal Himself to us when we engage our senses in Krishna's seva. The next shloka, Prachetas are saying, Shuddhaya Shantaya Namaha Svanisthaya Manasya Partham Vilasadvayaya Namo Jagatsthana Layodayeshu Grihitamaya Gunavigrahaya. Shuddhaya, O Lord, you are completely pure. Shantaya, you are very peaceful. Namaha Svanisthaya, you are always fixed up in your original position as the Supreme Lord. There is no change in your position. Shuddhaya Shantaya Namaha Svanisthaya Manasya Partham Vilasadvayaya. Whatever is presented by this material energy, this Maya, appears to be valuable, meaningful, purposeful to our eyes only because of the illusion. These are all temporary. Whatever is presented in this material world are temporary. So when we take shelter of the Lord, that illusory perception is completely destroyed. We will be able to understand the temporary nature of this material world and material objects to the degree we align ourselves to devotional service of Krishna. So, Manasya Partham Vilasadvayaya. And he says, Namo Jagatsthana Layodayeshu Grihitamaya Gunavigrahaya. The Prachetas are saying that to create, to maintain and to destroy this universe, you accept Gunavataras. The Lord will accept the forms of Brahma, Vishnu and Shiva to create this universe, to maintain this universe and to destroy this universe. So the next prayer, 24th sloka. Further qualities of the Lord are described. Namo Vishuddha Sattvaya Haraye Harimedhase Vasudevaya Krishnaya Prabhave Sarvasatvatam. Namo Vishuddha Sattvaya. O Lord, you are in pure mode of goodness. In this material world, the sattva guna is often tinged with rajoguna and tamoguna. But the Lord is in pure mode of goodness. Namo Vishuddha Sattvaya Haraye means the Lord is Hari. Means he steals. Hari means one who steals. What does he steal? The Lord steals the difficulties of his devotees. That's why he's called Hari. Haraye Harimedhase. Harimedhase means the Lord constantly thinks how to steal. Right? Harimedhase means one whose intelligence functions in such a way that he is constantly planning and scheming to steal. Means the Lord is constantly planning and scheming to relieve his devotees from all material difficulties. Haraye Harimedhase. Vasudevaya, you are all pervading the Lord, all pervading Lord. Krishnaya, you are Krishna. Prabhave Sarvasatvatam, and you also expand the glories of your devotees. Next. Namaha Kamala Nabhaya, Namaha Kamala Malini, Namaha Kamala Padaya, Namaste Kamalekshana. Namaha Kamala Nabhaya, oh Lord, you have a lotus navel. We know this shloka. Kunti also offered a similar shloka. And Namaha Kamala Malini, you wear a flower garland that is made of lotus flowers. And Namaha Kamala Padaya, your lotus feet. And Namaste Kamalekshana, you have lotus eyes. Next. Rupam Bhagavata Tvetad Asesha Klesha Sankshayam Avishkritam Nah Klishtanam Kimanyad Anukampitam. Very beautiful shloka. In this shloka, the Prachetas say that, oh Lord, you have manifested this beautiful form in front of us. Rupam Bhagavata Tvetad Asesha Klesha Sankshayam. And this darshan of yours can completely vanquish all our kleshas, all our distresses. When we take darshan of Krishna in front of the deity form, then all the difficulties are completely vanquished, if only we have that faith. So when we are prayerful while taking darshan of Krishna, then Krishna can destroy our distresses. When we are not prayerful enough, and we go in front of the deities, we see them, oh, they are nice, they are beautiful forms, that's all. But we can make a personal connection with Krishna by being prayerful when we are taking darshan of the Lord. And that darshan, that divine darshan of the Supreme Lord, the deity is not different from Krishna. When we are taking darshan of Krishna's deity, we are actually standing in front of Krishna. Whether we understand it or not, whether we realize it or not, whether we realize it today or tomorrow or after 10 years or after 10 lifetimes, that is fact that we are standing in front of Krishna when we are taking darshan of Krishna's deity. Krishna has mercifully manifested in front of us in this accessible form. And when we sincerely offer prayers to that beautiful form of Krishna in the form of his deity, then Krishna will completely destroy our distresses. That does not mean there are no difficulties in devotee's life. Krishna will bestow his merciful glances on that sincere devotee taking darshan, and Krishna will give that devotee the necessary maturity to see miseries as mercy, to withstand all these miseries, to tolerate all these miseries in a very mature spirit and not be perturbed. A devotee is not affected by difficulties in life like a conditioned soul, like a materialistic person. So the devotee is not devastated or disheartened or discouraged or depressed in the midst of difficulties. A devotee has determination to practice devotional service. Because of one's devotion, a devotee is not devastated in the midst of difficulties. So one has faith in Krishna. Devotee has faith in Krishna. Next, you appear in the form of Archa Vigraha. In the 28th shloka, the Prachetas are glorifying the Archa Vigraha, the deity form of the Lord. We already covered this. Then 29th shloka, the Prachetas are saying, you are the super soul, you know all our desires. And we have one desire. We want a benediction. So far, the Prachetas glorified the Lord. Now they were asking for a benediction from the Lord. What benediction they want? So before asking what benediction they want, first they glorify the Lord's position. Oh Lord, you are Ananta, you are unlimited. Why you are unlimited? They say, Varam vrini mahethapi nathatvat paratah parat nahyantastvad vibhutinam sonanta itigi yase. 31st sloka. They say that Varam vrini mahethapi, oh Lord, we want a varam, we want a boon from you. What is that? Nathatvat paratah para. They don't say what is the boon immediately. They say, oh Lord, you are paratah parat. Para means transcendence. Paratah para means beyond transcendence. You are beyond the transcendental Brahman. You are Bhagavan. And nahi antastvad vibhutinam. There is no end to your vibhutis or your opulences. So ananta iti giyase. That's why you are called Ananta. Anta means end. Ananta means unlimited. No end only. There is no end to your opulences. That's why you are called Ananta. Fine. So then he says that the Prachetas are saying that because you are Ananta, you are unlimited, we seek an unlimited benedictions from you. So if you go to, say for example, a beggar went to a donor. If the donor is a simple person, a middle class person or whatever, he can donate up to 10 rupees or 20 rupees. That's all the donor has. Now the expectation of a beggar is in that level only. But if the beggar goes to a multimillionaire, beggar goes to a king, and king can provide unlimited wealth to the beggar. King can give a private palace to the beggar. King can give so many servants to the beggar, if only the beggar can ask. So depending on whom are we approaching, our expectation will be like that. If the beggar approaches a simple middle class person who can just give him some 10 rupees, 20 rupees or 100 rupees, so he will have that much expectation only. If the beggar is accepting donation from a very big donor, a very big king, then he will have a better expectation, more expectation. Now here, the Prachetas are begging for a boon from the Lord. And the Lord is Ananta. There is no limit to his opulences. So when we go to Ananta Lord, when we go to unlimited Lord, we should ask for an unlimited benediction. We want an unlimited benediction. And they say that what is that unlimited benediction? They say, we'll just recite the shloka also. Yavatte maya sprishta bharamama iha karma bhi tavad bhavat prasanganam sangasyanno bhave bhave. So, O Lord, the benediction that we want is the following. Yavatte maya sprishta bharamama iha karma bhi. We may transmigrate from one body to another body because of our karma, because of maya. We may go from one life to another life. We may repeatedly wander in this cycle of birth and death. We have no problem about it. You are not asking for liberation from birth and death cycle? Yeah, we are not asking for that. Then what do you want? They say that tavad bhavat prasanganam sangasyanno bhave bhave. In whichever life we may be in, we desire the association of your devotees. So that benediction that the Prachetas wanted from the Lord is association of devotees. That is the unlimited benediction. Why? They say, why are you asking for association of devotees out of everything? So they say, Tulayamala venapi nasvargam na punarbhavam bhagavat sangi sangasya martyanam kimutashishaha. So if you take a tula, a balance, and put one moment of association of devotees on one side, and you put all svarga, means heaven or liberation on the other side, this will weigh more. Means devotee association even for a moment is much, much, much more valuable than liberation or heaven also. That's why they did not ask for heavenly planet. They did not ask for liberation. They're asking for Vaishnava Sangha. They wanted the association of devotees. Because in the association of devotees, there is constant glorification of Krishna. And when we hear that glorification of Krishna in the association of devotees, then what will happen? Our consciousness will be completely purified and our heart is completely satisfied. So when we access that satisfaction of hearing Krishna's glories in association of devotees, we don't aspire for any other so-called satisfaction of merging in impersonal Brahman or entering the heavenly planets or anything whatsoever. So this is the benediction. This is the aspiration of all the pure devotees. We have seen the same thing in Dhruva Maharaj's prayers. Dhruva Maharaj says, Yanirvritis tanubhritam tavapada padmadhyanat bhavat jana katha shravanena vasyat sa brahmanisva mahimanyapi nathamabhut kim tvantakasi lulitat patatam vimanat. Dhruva Maharaj said that, oh Lord, happiness can be attained only in two ways. One, by meditating on your lotus feet, tavapada padmadhyanat. Second, by hearing Krishna Katha in the association of your devotees. So, bhavat jana katha shravanena vasyat. And Dhruva asked, Bhaktim muhuhu pravahatam tvayime prasango. So, oh Lord, I want the association of your devotees and I want to hear Krishna Katha in that association. That's the desire of Dhruva. And what was the desire of Pruthu? We discussed in 4th canto. He said that, Nakama yenatha tadapyaham kvachin nayatra yushmat charanambujasavaha mahattamantar hridayan mukhachuto vidhatsva karnayuta meshame varaha. He says that I want millions of years to be able to hear Krishna Katha as spoken by your pure devotees. Dhruva had the same desire. Pruthu had the same desire. We saw in Rudra Gita, Shiva had the same desire. We saw in Narada Muni's teachings to Prachina Barhi, he also said that association of devotees and hearing Krishna Katha in that association of devotees is the greatest aspiration of devotees. So, now Prachetas are also saying the same thing. So, just the 4th canto of Bhagavatam itself is repeatedly proving what is a worthy aspiration for all of us, to be able to live in the association of devotees and hear about Krishna. That's the topmost benediction in the entire cosmic manifestation. This is the worthiest benediction. This is unlimited benediction. So, when the Parijata Andasha Labdhe, another shloka is there in this series. Parijata Andasha Labdhe means a honeybee goes from one flower to another flower searching for honey. But if the honeybee finds a Parijata flower, in the Parijata flower there is unlimited honey. So this honeybee need not go to any other flower. Once it goes to Parijata flower, so honeybee can put a straw in that Parijata flower and drink all the honey. Unlimited honey is there. So no need to go to any other flower. Similarly, a devotee, when he gets the association of devotees, other Vaishnavas, and if he hears Krishna Katha in that association, he need not go anywhere. So in Vaishnava Sangha there is all protection. So Vaishnavas constantly glorify Krishna. When there is pure nectarian Krishna Katha river flowing in the association of devotees, and if we don't take bath, if we don't immerse ourselves, if we don't jump into this nectarian ocean, we are just underutilizing the association of devotees. Association of devotees is not meant to do any other things. There are so many other things to do, but association of devotees is specifically meant to glorify Krishna and render service to Krishna. That's the main activity that we need to do along with other devotees. Next. They also glorify the association of Shiva. Oh Lord, 10,000 years back, Lord Shiva came to us voluntarily from this Mansarovar. So Shiva came to us 10,000 years back and he taught us Rudra Gita. Rudra Gita we discussed in 1 hour, in half an hour in our Bhagavad Pravaha series. And Shiva must have spoken all the shlokas of Rudra Gita, which may be some 30, 40, something like that. So he must have spoken all these shlokas for a certain amount of time. So how much time is required to recite this one prayer, one Rudra Gita? Few minutes basically. So the Prachetas got only that much brief association of Shiva. Whatever time is required to recite this, teach this Rudra Gita, that much is the only time that Prachetas associated with Lord Shiva. But they chanted that Rudra Gita, they followed the teachings of Lord Shiva for 10,000 years. And after 10,000 years, while standing in front of Lord Vishnu, they were remembering Shiva. Oh, only because of Shiva we are able to see you now. So a devotee is always grateful to those people who guide him on the path of bhakti. So Shiva guided these Prachetas on the path of bhakti. So Prachetas are so grateful to Shiva. Similarly, Narada Muni guided Prahlad Maharaj on the path of bhakti. So while standing in front of Narasimhadev also, Prahlad is saying, I want to serve the lotus feet of Narada Muni. So that is the value of association of devotees. So we have to be very grateful to that Vaishnava Sangha. We have to be very grateful to all those devotees who have contributed directly or indirectly to our progress in Bhakti Yoga. And in this way, Prachetas ask benedictions from the Lord, and the Lord is very happy to bestow the benedictions. And later, Prachetas, and the Lord just left. So after giving darshan to Prachetas, Lord left. And although Prachetas are not completely satisfied seeing the beautiful form of the Lord, still the Lord had just left. The Prachetas got only very brief amount of darshan of the Lord. Then Prachetas came out of the water and they saw so many trees were growing on the surface of the earth. Prachetas became quite concerned. If so many trees grow, where will be the land for agriculture? So there should be clear lands for agriculture to do crops and all. Prachetas became angry and they started emanating fire from their mouths and they burned the trees. And as they were burning the trees, suddenly Brahmaji came and then told, oh, you don't burn all the trees. Okay, so you relax. Now first you marry this Marisha. So Brahmaji came and delivered this Marisha to the Prachetas as the wife, as the Lord has predicted already. And Prachetas married Marisha and they stopped from burning the trees, all the trees. And then they went back to kingdom and they ruled in a very exemplary manner. So Prachetas became perfect in their Krishna consciousness. And later Prachetas retired from there. After ruling for a long time, they left Marisha in the care of Daksha. Daksha is their son. So the time Prachetas begot Daksha in the womb of Marisha, and they left Marisha in the care of Daksha, and they went to the forest. They went on the shore of ocean, and they associated with a great sage named Jajili Muni, and they started performing devotional service. So in this fourth canto, Prachetas' enlightenment by Lord Shiva is described elaborately, and their darshan of Vishnu and their prayers offered to Vishnu are described very elaborately. But their household life and their political life, the king's responsibilities that they performed, that is described in very brief. And after their retirement, again there is elaborate description. So after retirement, they go to Jajili Muni's ashram and they perform some certain austerities. At that time, Narada Muni comes to enlighten them again. So Prachetas are so glorious that they got the association of Shiva in the beginning and Vishnu in the middle and Narada Muni at the end of their lives. So Narada Muni came and enlightened them. When Narada Muni came, Prachetas said that, oh Narada Muni, we have associated with Shiva, we have associated with Vishnu, but we have forgotten their teachings. Out of their humility they are saying. So again we were engrossed in so many other household responsibilities. Now can you please enlighten us on the path of Bhakti Yoga? Then Prachetas requested Narada Muni like that. Narada Muni started speaking to Prachetas. He glorified devotional service. He said, so many beautiful shlokas are there in Narada Muni's teachings to Prachetas. We will discuss as many as possible. So he said that 11th shloka I will describe. Shrutena tapasa vakim vacho bhischitta vrittibhim bodhaya buddhya vakim nipunaya bale naindriya radhasa. Narada Muni says that Shrutena tapasa vakim, what is the use of your Vedic education? What is the use of your austerity? What is the use of your eloquence, power of speech? And vachobhi, chitta vrittibhi, what is the use of your mental activities? If one does not perform bhakti unto Krishna, all one's faculties and all one's activities are basically redundant, they are useless. Without bhakti, everything is useless, he says. One's high birth is useless, and one's power of speech, elevated intelligence, bodily strength, sensual power, all these are of not great use if one does not have devotion unto the Supreme Lord Krishna. Next, 12th shloka. Kim va yogena sankhena nyasa svadhyayayorapi kim va shreyo bhiranyaischa nayatratma prado harihi. Kim va yogena sankhena, what is the use of your yoga, meditation, sankhya, analysis of matter and spirit, nyasa svadhyayayorapi, nyasa means sannyasa, renunciation, svadhyaya means Vedic study, kim va shreyo bhiranyaischa, what is the use of other pious activities and auspicious activities if yatra atma pradoharihi, if you do not worship the Supreme Lord Hari, who can give you spiritual realization. So all these Vedic processes and all these rules and regulations, yama, niyamas that we follow are ultimately meant to invoke a feeling of devotional service within us. Even in the first canto also we discussed, Ataha pumbhirdvijasreshta varna shrama vibhagashaha svanushthitasya dharmasya samsiddhir haritoshanam. All these varnashrama vibhagashaha, these rules and regulations of different varnas and ashramas are there only to invoke a feeling of devotional service unto Krishna and to satisfy the Supreme Lord Krishna or Hari. Okay. Next, we'll skip some shlokas and we'll go to the 14th shloka, which is very popular. 14th shloka says, Yatha taror mola nishechanena trupyanti tatskanda bhujopashakhaha pranopaharacha yathendriyanam tathaiva sarvarhanamachyutejyaham. In this shloka, Narada Muni says that Yatha taror mola nishechanena. How do you water a plant? You pour water on the root of the plant, not on the leaves or twigs or flowers or fruits or anywhere. You pour water on the root of the plant. Then the plant will be nourished. When the water is given to the root, and from the root, water, these plants are called padapas, means they accept nourishment from their pada, their roots. So the plant is nourished. The leaves and the twigs and the flowers and the fruits, all of them are completely nourished when the water is given to the root of the tree, right? So now, similarly, if we worship the Supreme Lord Krishna, all the devatas are automatically satisfied. So Krishna is like the root of all existences. He is Aham Bija Pradah Pitaha. He is the seed-giving father of all existences. So he is the Bijam. Bijam Mam Sarva Bhutanam Vidhi Partha Sanatanam. Krishna describes multiple times in Bhagavad Gita that he is the seed-giving father. He is the root of all existences. Aham sarvasya prabhavo mattaha sarvam pravartate. Then name vidhu surganaha prabhavam na maharsheha. Aham adirhi devanam. Maharshinam cha sarvashaha. He is the Adi, he is the origin of all devatas. So Krishna is the root. Krishna is the tree. And all the devatas are like the leaves and flowers and twigs, etc. So if we worship the Supreme Lord Krishna, other demigods, other devatas are satisfied. So now somebody may say, I will water the root also, and I will water the leaves and twigs and flowers and fruits also. What's the problem in it? So to emphasize the supremacy and the superiority and exclusivity of Krishna Bhakti, Narada Muni gives another example. Narada Muni says, Pranopaharartha yathendriyanam. Okay, fine. You are saying that when I say you water the root, no need to water the leaves and twigs. You are saying that I will water both. Now I will give a more powerful example. Narada Muni says that Pranopaharartha yathendriyanam. We can give food only to stomach, only to the belly. Not to hands, not to legs, not to eyes or not to mouth or not to ears or any other bodily limbs. For the entire body to be nourished and rejuvenated, we have to give food only to the belly, only to the stomach. Pranopaharartha yathendriyanam. Other indriyas will get strength only when the stomach is fed. You cannot take rice or chapati, sabji, dal and put it on the hand or put it on the face or put it on the legs to nourish legs. Oh, my hand is feeling weak. Let me take the food and then put it on my hand and smear it on my hand. The hand will not be nourished. If the food is given to the stomach, then the hand will get strength. The legs will get strength. So ears and nose, everything will get strength. So like that, similarly, if we worship the Supreme Lord Krishna, then all other devatas are also satisfied. Tathaiva sarvarhanam achyutejyaha achyuta ijyaha. If we worship Lord Achyuta, sarvarhanam, all worships are accomplished. It means that we have worshipped everyone else also. Like that. So everything generates from the Lord. So like that, through various examples, Narada Muni emphasizes that Krishna Bhakti, worshipping of the Supreme Lord, Krishna or Vishnu is the topmost worship. One has to do that. So, and he also describes the glorious qualities of the Lord and his mercy, his satisfaction, self-control. If we have mercy, satisfaction and self-control, we can worship, we can easily satisfy the Lord. He says, Dayaya sarva bhuteshu, 19th sloka. Dayaya sarva bhuteshu santushtya yena kenava sarvendriyopashantya cha tushyatya sujanardanaha. Dayaya sarva bhuteshu. If we have daya, means mercy or compassion on all the people, all the living entities. Second, santushtya yena kenava. If we have santushti, means satisfaction with whatever comes of its own accord. So we have to honestly work with our honest efforts. Whatever we get, we have to be satisfied with it. Santushtya yena kenava. Sarvendriya upashantyacha. And if we also control our senses, not allow our senses to get totally distracted in multiple directions. If we have sense control, and if we have satisfaction, and if we also have compassion. Compassion, satisfaction and self-control. These three things will satisfy the Lord. Tushyati asu janardanaha. So thus we have to satisfy the Lord. In this way, Narada Muni gave his divine teachings to the Prachetas, and the Prachetas perfected their lives by following the instructions of Narada Muni, and they went back to Godhead eventually. And in this way, Maitreya Muni concludes his narration to Vidura. Vidura basically met Maitreya Muni in the 5th chapter of the 3rd canto. An entire 3rd canto he has heard from Maitreya Muni. And now he has had entire 4th canto. At the end of 4th canto, Vidura says that, Maitreya Muni, thank you so much for enlightening me. I am very grateful to you. Now I take your leave. So Vidura expresses his gratitude to Maitreya Muni, and he goes to Hastinapur now, because he has seen, Vidura has seen our Prachina Barhi being enlightened by our Narada Muni. So Prachina Barhi retired, and he also saw so many retirement stories. He has seen Prachetas retired, and we also discussed in 4th canto, Dhruva Maharaj retired, Anga Maharaj retired, Prithu Maharaj retired, Prachetas retired, Prachina Barhi retired. So many retirement stories are there. So Vidura, after hearing the whole description of the 4th canto and 3rd canto from Maitreya Muni, he felt a very great inspiration within his heart to go to Hastinapur, not to stay there, but to enlighten Dhritarashtra. We discussed Dhritarashtra's story, how Vidura enlightened Dhritarashtra in the 1st canto, 13th chapter. That happened after 4th canto, 31st chapter. After hearing these 2 cantos, 3rd and 4th cantos from Maitreya Muni, Vidura goes to Dhritarashtra and enlightens him. And Dhritarashtra also retires. Then he goes on the path of performing yoga, and then he gives up his body in a yogic manner. So that completes the 4th canto of Srimad Bhagavatam. And we conclude this series of lectures of Bhagavata Pravaha on 4th canto today. And in the next episode, we will begin the 5th canto of Srimad Bhagavatam. Thank you all very much. Granthara Srimad Bhagavatam ki jai, Srila Prabhupada ki jai. 1 hour 15 minutes.